Hmm? Ah!
What we really need in this world where everything's starting to be chaotic and crazy is, we need some connection, some human connection. And we have the possibility of doing that because we are inside people's heads.
Podcast Junkies, episode 136. Welcome back. My name is Harry Duran. If you are hearing my voice for the very first time, I normally don't talk like this. I talk like this. And I get silly, and regular listeners will know that I need to mix it up every now and then so you don't get bored. I like to talk to amazing podcasters every week or so-ish. And in case you missed last week's episode, we had a doozy of a show. I don't use the phrase doozy enough, so I'm going to start sprinkling that into my my conversation. Jay Soderberg, aka Pod Vader, is a longtime podcaster, and he talks about his experience working at ESPN, how he ended up at Blog Talk Radio, how the name came about, how his name Pod Vader came about, his fascination with Legos. As you can see, as you can hear from the description, it's wide-ranging, and he's a lot of fun. And he brings a unique perspective to podcasting and a sense of humor, which I think is always appreciated. So please check that out, episode 135. This week, we speak to Amanda Doughty from the Great Beer Adventure podcast. This wraps up my series from Podfest. I believe I've got everyone that I wanted to speak to from there. I did a count the other day, and I posted it in the Podfest group. I spoke to 10 podcasters from Podfest. It's been an amazing series of conversations. And just in time, as I'm getting ready to head to Podcast Movement at the end of August, and just going to restart that engine back up. So if you see me out and about and you can't miss me, I'll be in my yellowish orange Podcast Junkies t-shirt. Let's talk, let's connect, because that's how I decide what the next round is going to be. Who are the cool people that I met that are doing cool things and that have really nice and fun shows and that I want my listeners to get to know better. So Amanda falls into that category. I teased it last week, but she had beer samples ready and waiting for us on day one of Podfest. We talk about her plans to start a TV show about craft beer. We geek out on vampire movie picks. She's got some cool tips on how to seal your cooler when flying with beer. We talk about the different types of events she attends. Edible 6-pack beer rings. We'll leave it at that. You're going to have to listen more to hear that. Then we hear her first beer story. So much fun stuff here. She's such a good sport, and she's so much fun to have on the show. This is really a fun one. Sometimes these shows go down different paths, but this is just out and out fun, nonstop for the whole conversation, and I know you'll be smiling. We are sponsored by, specifically this episode, sponsored by Podbean. I wanted to walk you through quickly how sponsorship works on Podbean. They have it laid out here on the site, on the sponsorship.podbean.com site. Really easy. Step 1, create an ads campaign. Step 2, invite podcasts and review applications. They have a system that's going to recommend the top podcasts that match your criteria, and then you can invite the podcast you like. Step 3, reach agreements. You select the podcast you wish to work with based on their proposals. And step 4, you execute the campaign. They have a secure messaging system and allows you to work out the details with the podcaster, coupon codes, ad copy, time frame, etc. So it makes it really, they make it really easy for you. And in the words of Podbean, you're only a click away from launching your advertising campaign. So head on over to podbean.com/podcastjunkies and then click on the advertising tab for more details. Full show notes for this episode will be at podcastjunkies.com/136. We take pride in our show notes as they're really detailed. They've got the full summary, timestamps, tweetables, and even all the links mentioned. So if there's something that strikes your fancy, you can be sure that we've covered it in the show notes. So please check that out, podcastjunkies.com/136. So let's jump into our conversation with Amanda, but don't forget to stay till the end of the episode where I reveal this week's retention hashtag. So Amanda Doughty, which rhymes with rowdy. I like that. Welcome to Podcast Junkies.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yet another great outcome of Podfest. I can't I mean, I think I've met and had more people on from one conference with Podfest than I actually did with Podcast Movement, which is surprising considering how many people were there. But
Yeah.
I think it also speaks to the level of connection that you can make at an intimate conference, and you can just vibe with people over those 3 days in a way I think that's harder at Podcast Movement. I don't know if you've been to both or if you can compare it.
No, I haven't been to Podcast Movement, but I have heard tales, and it's very big and amazing and everything. But yeah, I think Podfest really allows for, that there is quite a few people there, but it's definitely a more manageable amount from what I can tell. And also I travel with beer. So it's really that I cheat the system. I try to make it super easy to like, oh, that's the girl with the beer. I should go talk to her.
Yeah.
So maybe Podcast Movement would be just fine for me. Like maybe I would get to meet everyone. That'd be a lot of beer though.
Well, that was the first one. It was funny enough that you mentioned it. It was one of the first things that I noticed when I walked into the convention center, and I was like, "Who's setting up like the beer table?" And I don't think I think I'd kind of seen or we had engaged maybe in one of the Facebook groups online, but I don't think we had met formally. So, what better?
I don't think formally, no.
What better introduction and what do they call? I guess they call it the social lubricator or the social de-inhibitor, like with beer. And was that a conscious effort?
So my whole thing is I love podcasting and I love craft beer. And the reason that I love both of them so very much is that there are so many passionate, creative people in both industries. And, both industries don't normally hang out as much as I hang out in both industries. So I really try to spread the word about how amazing craft beer is. And so my whole thing is drink local wherever you are. Obviously, I do a beer podcast. I mean, we're here. We've got to be talking about that, right? So I travel with beer from Maine or at least New England when I go out of state or out of the area so that I can really help show people like how amazing all these things are. And it's really is even without necessarily drinking the beverage. Yes, it does kind of lubricate situations sometimes. But even without that, it really offers a really interesting way to start a conversation because people are doing these amazing things with beers. And each beer has a story and each brewery has a story. And the can art just can pull people in. And I just think it's amazing to be able to show people what is happening around the world. And, a little inside secret of mine is that I actually have big plans to start a TV show someday where I go around and I travel and I find these communities where craft beer has come in and actually, changed the whole landscape because a brewery will open up and then a restaurant will open up that will have really great food and really amazing local beers and bring in other beers. And then artists will come and musicians will come. And it becomes this whole renaissance of these towns that, a lot of mill towns, where the mills and the factories were big and then they've kind of fallen on hard times when those industries have died down, and craft beer can come in and just revitalize a whole space, and it's happening all over the world. And I love sharing that with people because I don't think enough people really realize that that is what's happening. Alcohol is still a little taboo, like alcohol. No, but it's not. It's like this creative piece that yes, it's a conscious effort for me to bring beer with me wherever I go. But I am socially awkward anyway, so it gives me a reason to talk to people. Like, look at this beer I brought. You could try some if you want to. If you don't want to, at least look at it. It's really nice. It's pretty.
I thought what was funny is that it was in the morning, so we came over and you had the coffee beer too, which I thought was funny.
Yeah. Chris, I always get his last name wrong, but Krimistos.
Krimitsos. Hit that T in the middle.
Yeah. He was like, yeah, so I need you to pour some of your beers. I'm like, I didn't bring enough for everybody here. Like, he's like, I need you to pour some. I need you to do it now. I'm like, really, right now? Like, what? And so I think actually I'm going to try to work with him next year and try to work with some breweries down there and have like an actual proper tasting at the event. So
I think there's so much to tease apart there. When you were describing what it is you want to do in your plans, immediately I thought of like the Food Network and like the diners and whatever that show is called. Like
diners, drive-ins, dives or something.
So like, of course, why wouldn't there be a super niche show on craft beers? And I imagine, and why not you, right?
Why not? Well, actually, so there's a lot of thought that I've put into this. I've kind of just started scratching the surface with you. But Travel Channel or Food Network are places that I think it would be amazing to be. And there's actually been craft beer shows before. But what happens is, a host will go. Most of the time it's men. And they'll go and hang out with other brewers that are most of the time men. And they'll drink beer together. And, they just sometimes bro out together, and then you're just watching like a bro fest, and and if you're in that town, you're like, oh, that's really cool, I can go try that beer. But if it's a brewery that's on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast, and I'm not necessarily going to get a chance to get over there and try that beer. So I don't want to just look at a beer or a brewery. I want to look at the movement that's happening so you can really understand what craft beer is doing. And actually, there's stuff that shows that like craft beers as they are now craft beer shows don't do well on networks. But I think it's because of the way that it is. It's like you can't necessarily try those beers. So you get stuck just being like, oh, all right. But if you know the story and the passion, and that's really what I'm after, is like the emotion and the hows and the whys. Even in my podcast, that's what I want to know. I was telling, I'm starting to do some work with correspondence, and I've got like a lead correspondent that's helping me out. And he's a little bit of a bro guy sometimes. So I'm like, listen, I don't really care how they started a brewery. Most breweries started the same exact way. I'm like, I want to know what his wife thinks. Like, I want to know how it's changing their, relationship. I want to know, does he still have the same amount of hair as when he started? Like, I want to know all these things that are really like emotions. And I said, I know it's going to push you outside of your comfort zone to be able to have these conversations, but find it out. That's what I really want my show to be about, is really finding out the feelings. And I'm a girl. I like feelings. I have a lot of them. Like, I feel them all the time, every day. So why not share those and like find out what everybody else is feeling at the same time?
Well, this idea of feelings is really what we're about, and how we're really connecting in a way that's different. With podcasts, we only have the audio available, so we have to impart some of that emotions through the stories that we tell. And if we tell them correctly, and if we ask the right question, we elicit a response from our guests that the audience can hear. And then and if when people are like thorough in their response and they take their time, it's because they're thinking and because you've made them think. And so that if you ask them questions that really get their mind going, that provoke them, that elicit an emotion, I mean, those are the best things for me. When podcasts, I mean, I have so much, as podcasters, we have so limited time that we have to be really selective. And I think the shows that are catching my ear lately are the ones that, go deeper than just that surface level that you're alluding to.
Yeah. And I think, as you were talking, I was really trying to feel like in my head where I hear you, and I feel you like inside my head when you're talking. Right. And so you are somebody's Jiminy Cricket. You're in their head and you're having these conversations. And that's what a podcast allows us to do. I mean, we both have like the earphones on that sit outside our ears, but quite often you're literally inside somebody's ear with the earbuds. And so you want to not just fill them. Sometimes people just want like junk food for the brain, but that's why I watch vampire shows. Like, I don't really want to think. But I gotta tell you, we gotta pause and say that no vampire should sparkle in the sunlight. That is wrong. If that is the case,
you mean the actual vampire sparkling in the sunlight?
Yes. If you've ever tried to watch Twilight, you see like they go on, they're like, ooh, sparkly and shiny. You're like, no, that is not how vampires work. But anyways, so I get it. There are shows out there like that, but you know, what we really need in this world where everything's starting to be chaotic and crazy is, we need some connection, some human connection. And we have the possibility of doing that because we are inside people's heads.
We're going. I got to keep track of all the different threads we're opening up here.
Oh, you try. I see you taking notes. You try. My brain goes everywhere so quickly. Hold on.
Okay, we're going down the vampire trail now. I'm a fan of artsy vampire movies. Have you seen Let the Right One In?
No.
Oh, it's a Scandinavian. I think it's Swedish. I think it's a Swedish movie, and it's with children and it's vampires.
Oh, that sounds scary.
But it's so incredibly stylish. And they did an American version, and obviously it's never as good. But it's called Let the Right One In. I guarantee you're going to be just blown away because it takes the genre and just kind of, flips it a little bit. And kids are the main story. And it's not gore. It's just, tension. And yeah, it's just so well done. And then another one.
Hold on. Yeah. No. Wait, pause. Okay. If you're talking about kids being vampires, so I like teen angstiness because it's laughable, but kids are inherently like freaky anyways. And then like I've got two of them. I have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, and like they're little zombies half the time, and you're worried that they're going to eat your brain. Like they literally come up and they grab your face, and you're like, oh no, they're going to suck my soul, right? And then you add on top of that that being vampires. That sounds.
It's interesting.
That sounds worse than gore to me. Like
because a lot of times the best horror or is when it affects your mind and it lets you create the visuals. Those monster movies are the best when they don't show the monster. Like you just want to imagine, wow, how bad can this be, or what's around that corner, or what's under the bed, And inevitably when they show it, it's just like it wasn't as good as what your mind thought. Like when I read Stephen King books, I'm just like I can imagine 10 times worse than probably he even thought because your imagination gets the best of you sometimes.
Fun fact: Stephen King is from Maine, and actually where I grew up, my parents had but he actually also had a place down near Oxford Hills where I grew up, and my parents had a like a little gas station, and he would stop in there sometimes. And so he's been a patron of my family's before. So
I love. He's one of the I was reading a lot when I first got into reading like horror. He's really the only one I read because of horror because he's just an amazing storyteller. Like it just blows me away. I'd have these books like this thick hardcover books, and I would just plow through them in like a week. And my family already knew, like when it came Christmas time, they're like, "Well, is there a new Stephen King book available? Because we just get it for Harry. He'll love it." And so
it's coming back. Did you see that?
Yeah.
They're remaking. Oh, so scary.
That is scary. I watched the TV show. John Ritter was on there too. It was
there was a TV show?
Yeah, on ABC. They did a miniseries years ago. Yeah. And again, it's hard, but there have been a couple of Stephen King movies that have made it to the screen, like Misery was like amazing because Kathy Bates is amazing, and there's a couple that have translated well. But I'm not going to lose the vampire thread. There's another.
Okay, go vampires.
One more. It's called A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, and it's Iranian. Yeah,
wow.
It was made in Iran, and which is crazy. Super arty, subtitles and everything. But yeah, watch Let the Right One In, and then watch that one. It just throws the genre. Like you think. Everything's been done in the genre, and then you watch that and you're like, oh, this is how you're supposed to make like an intelligent like film about vampires that hasn't been done before. So both of those will be interesting. Please report back on your findings.
All right, I will. I put them on the list.
So the other thing you were talking about is the need to always travel and with beer. I get this vision of you as like in the Prohibition days, like rum runners and stuff crossing state lines. I mean, there was a time in this country when what you are doing would have been illegal.
It's not technically legal either, I don't think.
Oh, really?
There's a lot of weird rules. So Prohibition actually is Maine's fault, so we apologize. Back before Prohibition got started, Portland had like 600 bars and beer establishments in just a small little area. And Lushes, we took the whole like, don't drink milk or water very seriously. We're like, done. And it was bad. And so there was this whole push that they started outlawing alcohol. And when other states started adopting it, they actually called them the Maine laws. And so now we're really trying to like make up for it. That's why we've got so much amazing beer up here. We actually have I think we have over 85 breweries now. The number changes every day. They're just opening up so quickly. But yeah, there's so many laws left over from that, technically you're not necessarily supposed to like travel beers around, but everybody kind of does it. I think it's more if you're going to like
for reselling or something like that, maybe.
Yeah, and also I don't know that's necessarily legal for me to like go and share it with people. Like I can go and bring it for my own consumption.
Yeah. Or if you're going to a party, I mean, it probably has to do with the amounts, right? I mean, if you're carting kegs across state lines, that's like something different than a couple of 6-packs.
Yeah, it's always fun though. Like, so if you ever want to travel with alcohol, fly on Southwest because 2 bags fly free. So you can put your clothes in one and you can put a cooler in the other. And it's always funny because
travel with check in your cooler.
Yeah,
that's fun. So you've done that.
Yeah,
and
that's how I got to Orlando from Maine.
There's no. What about the air pressure? Like the that not exploding beers, that doesn't happen?
Well, there's exploding beers anyways. That happens sometimes, but that's more like a defect on the process.
Okay.
Somebody's messed up something. But no, think about it. They have soda up there. They serve beer themselves.
That's true.
So all those things are already up there. And so I actually have I have a very specific cooler that I travel with, and I can fit like 24 cans with bubble wrap around it. 26 if they're the right shape and size. And yeah, so you just kind of, put it in there, and you've got the one with the double zipper. You pop your lock on and you go up to the counter and you're just like, they're like, so do you have anything like this? And you're like, yeah, actually, that's all beer. And they're like, okay. And they're like, and they can tell like when there's conferences and stuff going on, because I actually went also this year down to DC, and I was bringing
for the podcasting conference.
No, this was for a craft brewers conference.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was fun, except for the whole getting food poisoning for most of the time I was down there, which ruined the entire experience. But other than that, it would have been a lot of fun. But I came home with a lot of beers for my husband, and I checked my bags in, and they're like, so a lot of people are doing this today. I was like, yeah, there's a conference. We're all going home. Like, they know, they can see, like they understand that a lot of people kind of like after, like lots of brewers and stuff will bring beers home. For me, my husband and I have a really awesome understanding. I'm kind of this introvert extrovert type of person. He more hangs out in the introvert space anyways, but the reason that Great Beer Adventure got started was because we would go out on these adventures together and I would blog about it. And then I had babies, and then it morphed into this podcast where it gave me an excuse to leave the house because I'm a really bad stay-at-home mom. Yeah. And so the kind of the agreement now is we get to continue this adventure together. I go out, I talk to people, I collect beer on my travels, and I bring it home, and I share the stories and the beers with him when I get back.
I'm notorious for asking logistical questions. Friends of mine will know that. It's a tendency that I have. So how do you seal a cooler? Because most of them are just like, just a lid that there's no lock on there.
Okay, so you get like the soft ones with the zippers, but then they have the soft ones that have the inserts that are harder.
Okay.
So there's a Coleman one that is a soft side, so it's got the zippers. You could also just use duct tape if you wanted to go with a hard plastic one. Just duct tape that baby up, but they'll probably slice it and re-duct tape it just to check it.
So
Yeah.
how many times do you name check potential sponsors on your show?
How to name check?
Well, you said mention Coleman. Like I'm immediately like when
Oh,
you start mentioning products, I'm like sponsors, sponsors, sponsors.
oh, listen, in my show, we talk about breweries and items and everything. So, I would say about half dozen times a show, there are potential people that should be giving me money.
So can you
And
talk can you talk a little bit about like the relationship you've had, or long-term plans and what your thoughts are about that?
about monetizing.
Yeah, sponsors in general, yeah, because it seems like such a great opportunity.
Yeah. So what happens is a lot of people that are in the podcasting space, but not in the beer space, are like, oh, well, it makes perfect sense. Have a brewery give you money. Breweries don't make money that much. Like, you don't go into a brewery being like, you know what, I'm going to be rich and famous when I'm done with this. No, you go in because you love it, and you're like, yeah, this is a viable business plan. And then you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to pay for shoes?
Yeah.
So okay, it's not quite that bad, but
How am I going to pay for my beers?
right. How do I keep making beer? So they don't have a lot of wiggle room for a lot of like ongoing stuff. Also, beer is very regional. So unless you are like Sierra Nevada, who's big, they're everywhere. They could do something like this, but at the same time, they're not necessarily going to want to sponsor a small show like I have. Who is it?
How about Lagunitas?
Lagunitas. That's who I was thinking of. So Lagunitas, they sponsor shows, but they sponsor like big shows like NPR. They're a big brewery, so they want to sponsor somebody big that are in millions of ears. And it makes sense for them. For me,
but when you think about it, just to kind of, push the hypothesis on that, isn't it better to have an audience that's super, super, super niche like you? Like I heard it on Song Exploder. It's a podcast from Hrishikesh Hirway. He takes songs and he breaks apart like each stem of the song, and he talks to the artist. He's talked to Bono and Bjork. It's amazing. I remember when he started the show. But I was walking home one day and I was listening to a show. I heard Lagunitas in the end. I'm getting to the deli. I think it's like a hot summer day. And I go in and I'm like, I want to buy a beer. And I literally just remember hearing Lagunitas on the show. They will never know that promo led to me make that purchase. I've talked about this a couple of times, but it's a branding play. So, he's not, he doesn't like every single person in his audience probably doesn't drink beer. So there's a portion of his audience where that promo falls on deaf ears. But for you, like almost 80 to 90% of people would be like, oh, if Amanda recommends it, I'll check it out. And so it's just like so much more like concentrated and like laser focused, the demographic that you have.
Yep. Yes. Unfortunately, that's not a lot of the way the big advertising bucks feel.
Yeah.
So I do have a way that I'm going to try to partner up with breweries, and I can get to that in a minute. But you were specifically asking about sponsorship. I have a hard time asking people to give me money because I form these relationships. We talk about things, and then be like, oh, by the way, I could really use a little bit of your cash.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel right to me. So I actually just partnered up with a local person here. She's wonderful, and she's going to start reaching out to some people. So the people that make sense for sponsors for my show are actually not MailChimp, which is a great service. I use them, but it has nothing to do with anything.
Well, not for your audience.
No, right. That's what I mean. Like my audience is like, great. I'm not sending a newsletter. Like, the most I'll do is take a picture and pop it on Instagram.
I've been. I want to hold that thought. I don't want you to lose yours. I'll write mine down.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So the people that make sense for like advertisers on my show would be, the beer geek paraphernalia websites. So homebrew supplies, T-shirts, home bars, which are really a big thing now. They're the next home chefs or the home bartenders, and so those type of places. So we'll be reaching out to some of them. Also tourist places, so like the Portland Board of Tourism, that would be a really good one. I've actually talked to the Maine tourism board, and they're going through some like structural stuff, and I don't even know who to talk to. I don't think they know who I should talk to. So, you know, you gotta. Those are the types of people though, or like things to do in places when you get there. So like Portland, Oregon, or Portland, Maine. If one of those places has a really great like brewery tour bus company, that would be a great type of place. So those are the people we're going to be working with trying to bring on as sponsors. As far as the breweries are concerned, we're actually going to try to do also Ashley, who's working with me now, she's going to be reaching out to breweries and seeing about them being part of almost like a paid to play directory. So we're going to put together this whole package and try to get people around the country, potentially the world, but we're going to start with the country, that, you know, they get a whole package, which is like a blog post and on this directory, you know, part of an interactive map, their events, we share the social media, really making it be more of just being on the like paying each month to be on the podcast, but more of like being on our platform. And because we're really working on trying to pump up the travel aspect of it, so that's what we're gonna be working on bringing in. And so we're calling it the Member Brewery Program, which is kind of a working title right now. We're thinking that it might make sense for like really good beer bars to be on there too. But we don't know if there'll be any kind of interest in that. So we're going to wait and see before we like rename it or anything. But yeah, that's what we're kind of trying to do to like work with those breweries, because it makes a lot more sense to give them some SEO value.
Yeah.
So that, you know.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think try to get that quick win first, or it might get discouraging as you spend a lot of time and you're trying to chase down sponsors. I think figure out, you know, where you might have the best response, or anyone that you've even started conversations with, and that travel coolers as well. Look up there's probably 10 or 15 that specialize in that, you know, just hit them up. And, you know, a friend of mine, Danny Peña, he's one of the early guests on the show. He's got a podcast called Diz Runs, and he would create promos for sponsors, but he didn't have the contract with them already. So he would just do a read, and he would just act as if they were already a sponsor, and then he would send that to them. So he'd put them on SoundCloud and just be like, hey, this is what it would sound like if I was doing an ad read for your show, for your product. So that's sometimes they need to hear it, right? Because you can describe it and you can show it and you can give them links to other stuff. But when they hear like their show, their product being mentioned on your show, to your target audience, I think that solidifies that for them a bit more.
Yeah, we think that the best place to start is with this Member Brewery Program. We've got all the stuff laid out, and we have big plans of getting that going in the next week. We already have some people that are interested in it. The plan was for me to tell everybody about it at the Craft Brewers Conference before I got food poisoning. After I got food poisoning, the plan became just get the audio that I came for, because I can't do much else.
So did you have a podcasting setup there?
Oh, I do everything on the run. I say that I podcast in the wild. So I actually have two setups. One setup is I have the Zoom H6, and for some reason, I don't know, I think there's a power problem, but I can't get all 6 of them to like really pick up correctly, but I can get 4 of them to pick up correctly. Like putting that extra piece on really does something to the audio. So normally when I go out to, you know, a bar, brewery, tap room, hop field, like all these different places where I could possibly find people that want to talk about beer with me, I will pop that on a table, pop up some mics, and we'll just have a conversation there. But for events, and I actually had it on down at PodFest, I use a leather harness, and it's got my Zoom H2N strapped to it with my ATR 2100 or AT 2005, whichever one happens to be attached.
Handy, yeah.
Yeah, whichever one's handy, with my pink windscreen on it and my mic flag. And yeah, so that's kind of how I do that one. I like going out to events like that. Like I said, I am socially awkward, so that kind of gives me a way to start talking to people. People are like, what are you wearing? I'm like, oh, this handy leather harness here is, you know, part of my podcast.
Conversation starter.
Exactly, yeah.
So what was that the first time you'd been to that craft beer conference?
Yes, that was the first one. I went as media. It was lovely.
And what was your experience? Because this is such an interesting thing that anyone who's podcasting can really think about. Like, what is your niche? What do you specialize in? Where do people go and congregate around the topic that you're podcasting about? And how can you go in and be the podcasting, expert or the podcasting person? Because a lot of people there are there to demo their beer or demo their beer products or paraphernalia or whatever. And you come in with a different angle because you want to tell their story. So can you talk a little bit more about like what that experience was like for you, and if there were any surprises or things that happened that you didn't think would happen?
So I didn't think I would get food poisoning.
That's number one. Yeah.
That really dampened the whole thing. But yeah, so I feel like there's definitely two types of potential places to go. So like conference wise. So there's like your industry that you're in and you are being the voice of, and then where your audience is. And they're not necessarily at the same place. So I was at an industry specific place. So that's where I go to really get their stories, have conversations, find out about them, make those connections that could potentially turn into more. And, one, you have to be on. Like you have to be your true self. And if, whatever that true self is, you need to be that person and be there and be on and ready to go. I was not. I failed miserably at that. But I definitely did get some really good audio because people are willing to tell their story. They want to tell it. They want to be, they're very passionate about it. Like in my industry, that's what it is. Now, I also bring my microphone when I go to places where my audience are. So those are more festivals. And I'm actually putting on an event called the Beer Geek Retreat, which is like a 2-night sleepaway camp on the ocean for beer geeks. It's going to be so amazing. That's where I actually was this morning. I was like taking pictures on the ocean, drinking beers, recording things. Yeah. So like it was a really fun morning here in Maine. But those events are different. I still bring my microphone and I find places where I can bring outside perspectives. So something that the first 100 episodes I always included in like, what is your first beer memory? And Clamor is actually a really great spot to be able to take one question like that and get a lot of people to be able to answer it. Because you don't have to go and have it be part of like your show. I just did first beer memories on Clamor. I haven't put any up in a long, long, long time, but you can take it. And if you have a question like that, you can take your microphone and you can start interviewing all these people. I think Danny Peña was talking about like going to lines. He does Gamertag Radio. And so he would go to these video game releases and he would get people on camera and they would want to tell their friends because they were on camera. It's the same thing with a microphone. You go and you ask somebody their first beer memory and, then use that and, they're going to start trying to listen and find themselves. And it also gives you a chance to like give out your stickers, give out your podcast cards, talk to them and really get them engaged. And the microphone really is the way, that's my lubricant. Yes, there's beer there, but my way that I really get people to talk to me is just be like, hey, I want to know about you, and pop a mic in their face. And they're like, I will tell you everything. And I will be your best friend. And how can I tell my friends how awesome I am? And
Danny's great. He's there's so much inspiring stuff that comes out of his mouth. Like every time I meet him or see him on stage, like I'm just overwhelmed by his heart too, because he's such a giving person and he just gives unconditionally. If you guys want to listen to that episode, it's 78 where I interviewed just Danny, and 96 where I interviewed the whole Gamertag Radio crew, invited into the CBS Studios. So it's these connections, right? So Danny's in Florida, but he was coming to LA because he's part of the Play.it group within CBS. And he said, hey, Harry, I'm going to be at the studio. Why don't you come into the studio and record and interview the whole team? And I was like, yeah, come into a professional recording studio. And it's amazing. It's every podcaster's dream. You sit there. There's really nothing to touch. You just start talking and there's a guy in the booth. He's like, all right, just go ahead. And then when you're done, he's like, all right, I'll send you the file. And you just walk up and just like, you don't have to like save nothing. You don't have to like watch files and it's just all taken care of. That's how Howard Stern feels. Like he sits down. He's like, okay, you guys make the magic now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, it's so much fun like that. And, you know, I I I think one of the best things that Danny does is he really finds new ways to connect with his audience. And I'm not quite on the same level, but I try to do that too because I'm super niche, however you want to pronounce it. I'm super small and specific in my topic as well. So I really try to find ways to do that as well, like through the retreat. And also, I'm on this big kick right now. I think I have the best show notes ever. I can say that because I don't write them. Um, you could totally do this yourself though if it was something, but a lot a lot of times show notes are like a recap of what's happening in
Yeah.
the show. With links and back stuff. That's not what mine are. Mine have the links. There are backlinks to everything. You can find everything that you need to know that are, we talk about in the show. Oh, you want to know the link to that? Just go to the show notes. They're there. But they're more of a companion piece. So a little bit more, it's more of a blog post about it. And, I have somebody that edits my show and he does the show notes as well. So as he's listening to it, it's his reaction to it. So, on the 100th episode, he knows me at this point. He's like, our Disney princess of craft beer, has our 100th episode. He took everything that I loved and described a theme park and what I would want the theme park to be. In a prior one, I interviewed people down in Florida about a brewery called Dead Lizards. So he talked about like he has lizards in his backyard. So he went to actually try to go hunt one down and offer one a beer. And he like told us the whole story of him trying to do that because of the listening to the show. And so it really adds this dimension, this added value for the audience, really trying to think about on Instagram, I try to make my Instagram feed be the magazine of the show, not just like, this is what the episode is. Like these are all the beery, wonderful things that happen at Great Beer Adventure. And then the stories is kind of like, the behind the scenes and trying to really think about how we can add all this extra value into a platform. And that's what I'm really growing is my platform, not necessarily just my podcast.
Have you looked into partnering with other beer podcasts and seeing if there's, I always have this abundance mindset because a lot of times people freak out when they see other podcasters doing the same thing they're doing and they take one of two stances, right? They're like, well, it's competition, hands off. And then others like Jason Kabasi does Walking Dead cast. He's actually reached out to other Walking Dead podcasters and they've done collaborations where they share, episodes together, like recap episodes or something. So I'm wondering if something similar happens with the beer podcasts.
Yes. So this is what happens. I started here in Portland, Maine 2 years ago. About a year later, about 4 different podcasts popped up all about beer. My first instinct was, I hate them all. My second instinct was, well, I might as well. I can still hate them as much as I want because damn it, I started.
Yeah. But that's a sign that they noticed what you were doing. So that's,
right. Right. And so, as soon as I find out, I'm like, oh, hey, how are you? Welcome.
Yeah.
We should have you come on the show. Like, let's do this. So I'm definitely one of those people that, no, I don't actually hate them. I'm good friends with most of them now, but my first instinct is just to be like super irritated. But then I know that in the long run, that's not going to do me or them any good. And why start these rivalries when we're all trying to do the same thing different ways? Like there's a beer and jujitsu show. I have no idea how to do jujitsu and I have no intention to ever do it. So if that's what they want to do, you go, because I am not, that's not going to be on my show. So different audiences. But it makes more sense for us to really team up. So I'm definitely one of those people that, even though my initial thought is like, I bring people in. I'm like, okay, how can we work together?
Why not?
But also I think that not just within the beer shows. So one of the things I'm really working on right now is Clay Groves from the Fish Nerds. He's out of New Hampshire. So Maine, New Hampshire, we're really close. We partner up a lot. Beer and fish pair so well together that we really like play on that quite a bit. And and we're actually working on putting together a workshop to do at a couple podcast conferences on how you can do these, like in TGIF when like Full House characters showed up on Family Matters. Like, how can you do that? How can you do your own version of that in the podcasting world? And you can work with, within like business shows, working with business shows, but what about a business show working with a beer show?
Sure.
Like, what could we do? What can we bring together? What is a collaboration episode that would be different? We could just share one episode. Yeah. And I have done that with some people where it's the same episode on both feeds, but what could we do to make them be companion episodes? So, my listeners are going to want to come over to your feed to hear what we did on yours, because it's going to be different than what we did on mine. And how can we start trying to share audience like that and really growing the community as a whole?
Yeah, I did that with Dan Lizette of the Podcast Digest. Essentially, what we did is we swapped host roles. So if you listen to his show, and we released it, I believe, the same week. So if you listen to that episode, like he showed up on my show. He and he did the Podcast Junkies introduction, but it was him, his voice. So people were like, "What's going on here?" And then I did it on his. Hey, welcome to the Podcast Digest. I'm Harry Duran. And people were like, "What's going on here?" Like, and then we did. So we kind of forced people to listen to the second part of the interview on the other show. So I think it just introduced some new people in a quirky way. But it's your show. You can try different things and fun things and at any time.
Exactly. And I think that it's really trying to find those hidden connections that, is a lot of fun. There's a lot of breweries out there that do a lot to support fishing. So it really makes sense that we can pull in that kind of stuff. We're actually planning a fishing trip. We're trying to get a brewer and we're going to go out like early morning. And, I think he said we're trying to catch redfish. I don't know what those are. I've never actually been fishing other than for like trout and stuff on the side of a river. So yeah, I'm going out on a boat and I'm going to go fishing with the fish nerds, and there'll be some kind of audio from that on both of our shows, and we'll see. And we're trying to get a brewer to come with us. And it's, I think that it really makes sense. No matter where you are in life, there's kind of like segments,
Yeah.
But I think like the majority of us indie podcasters all fall in the same segment, whether we're doing a business show, whether we're doing a fish show, whether we're doing a beer show, whether we're doing a gaming show, and so really trying to figure out how we can work together, support each other, and really try to boost up the industry as a whole. I think that, the big guys are doing really beautiful work. I love, a lot of the shows being put out by NPR and Gimlet and all of those. I love that. I think they're beautiful stuff. And I don't think we're against them. I just think it's easier for us to work with other indie people as well, and really help us all rise up as an industry and take over more and more earbuds.
Totally. I have a interesting mix of fish and beer that I just came across this morning. So this is totally random, but I was reading Fast Company magazine, and they were talking about like innovative companies. And there's this one company that has invented, do you know the plastic 6-pack, because it's bad for the environment, right? That, the fish eat it and stuff like that. So I don't know if
I know what you're talking about.
The edible one, right? And so I thought it was super cool that, you think of these things that, people would just cut them and just like, oh, so the fish don't eat them. But if they are going to eat them, just make them edible, which I thought was super genius. And I was like, oh, I was thinking about this as we were going to have our conversation today. Like, yeah, beer and, good stuff that's for the environment. So, but obviously you've heard of it already. So that's cool.
Yeah. There's a little bit of controversy around it just because, there's a lot of people that are really interested in using them, because a lot of brewers are really into trying to figure out. So the brewing process is actually a dirty process. There's a lot of water being used, and there's a lot of grain that is used, not just in the actual beer itself. Like the grain is just left over. It's spent. And what do you do with that? The water, you have to use a lot of water to cool down the water you're actually using in the beer. And there's a lot of cleaning and sanitizing. So a lot of water is being used. So it's really hard for a lot of brewers because, these people are more in line with doing right anyways. So they're like, oh, we want to do this. How can we get a hold of these? Can we purchase them? And it's just, there's a lot of like answers that aren't being a lot of questions that aren't being answered, and like, how do we get this? And it doesn't seem that it's like really readily available, and there's only one brewery that has it, but not like, I don't know. There's still a lot of questions.
I think it was Screaming Reels.
Sweetwater.
Screaming Reels.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I know Sweetwater uses them.
Okay. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Yeah, there's always innovation, right? And there's always opportunities, and maybe at some point you can be like, oh, eco check-in, what's happening with the industry? Because to your point, like especially if it's an industry that's known for a lot of waste, I think people who are going to be conscious of that and not ignore it, like pretend it's not happening in the industry. I think it's there's so much. It just tells you how varied the topic is. You think craft beer is like, oh, you're just going to talk about drinking beer, but there's so much. If you start teasing out all the different pieces of it, you'll never run out of stuff to talk about.
I know so many people when I first started were like, how are you going to talk about that first? So I'm like, oh, don't you even worry. I have like a year's planned already. Like, even now I'm nearly 2 years in, and we're switching format a little bit. But I've got the next year planned of what I want to talk about. Like, I already know, like we're starting to go bi-weekly because we want to do it in a little bit more, of a collage magazine type style. So it takes more editing. So I've got like the next 26 episodes. Like, okay, this is what we're going to talk about.
Very cool.
And now I'm like, I always write notes. I come out of every conversation with like 2 or 3 more ideas of things I want to talk about.
This is a random aside. Are we using the same green pen?
No, this is a pencil.
Okay.
I write all in pencil. I was a math teacher for a while, and I love math and art and everything. So pencils are my thing.
Pencil. So that's the next podcast then.
Yeah, pencils. The Great Pencil Adventure.
So for the listeners, obviously you guys know I do this on video Skype, and occasionally like my pen pops into the screen, and I started seeing Amanda's writing utensil pop into the screen. I was like, are we using the same
shade
pen?
Of green?
It is the same shade of green. So tell me your first beer story.
Okay, I will, but hold on. This is a shout out to Danny. Danny, you and I need to get together and do a show, and we can talk about games and pairing them with craft beer.
That sounds amazing. An amazing episode. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll do some kind of collaboration, and we'll put different things on each one. Maybe he can bring a bunch of games, and I will pair beers with him, and I'll bring a bunch of beers, and he can pair games with them. So
you could do that with anything. Now I'm like, okay, can we do a podcast review show episode review show where we pair podcast episodes with beers?
Yeah, there's Rich Brooks, who does Agents of Change. He has a conference here, and I was like, ooh, can I pair your people that are presenting and talking with beers? And he didn't get it. I was like, no, but it would be really good.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't understand. I'm like, all right, Rich, it's okay. Someday you'll understand me.
There's a lot of potential there.
There is so much potential. You don't even know.
If anyone listening has a podcast and can think of a good way to do a show, a beer pairing show with Amanda, when you listen to this, reach out to her, and I'm sure there'll be
Amanda at Great Beer Adventure.
Yeah. I mean, they're doing yoga and beer now. Like, it's so crazy. Like, so
yeah,
and the sky's the limit.
Yeah, right in the brewery.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. So my first beer story. There's the one that I was never one of those teenagers that actually had any beers or alcohol drinking up. Very straight edge, not by choice, but by circumstance. I grew up in the middle of nowhere. Literally, my closest neighbors were cows in Buffalo. Pretty strict parents, and definitely scary parents. Like, people didn't want to hang out with me. They're like, no, your
not going to your house.
No. And I was a great big dork, so I never really got invited to the pit parties anyways. That's just where people had parties, were in sand pits. Yeah, okay. Out in the middle of the woods in the sand pits.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that's how we roll in Maine. So my first sip of beer, I was actually a ski instructor. there was a party. There was like some old-timey ski instructor sitting next to the keg. He's like, "Here, kid, try this." And I was not very old at the time, like 16. But I mean, like in a beer drinking way, I wasn't old enough to be drinking. So I took a sip and I was like, "Ooh, that's gross."
Yeah.
And quickly moved on. It was fine. And then the next really significant beer memory was actually, so my husband and I, now husband, not then, we met back in 2004, and he had a quote unquote roommate at the time we met. And so we went out at the end of our first week of training together. We went and grabbed beers just to kind of talk, and we went to TGI Fridays, and he ordered like one of the extra tall Miller Lights, and I was like, "Yeah, I'll have that too." And I was over 21 at this point. I was like 24, I think, at this point. So my beer drinking had been limited to like at the end of a night out with the girls drinking cocktails. Like my stomach doesn't really like the sweet drinks.
Mm-hmm.
So like I would use the beer to be a base to all the acid of the juice drinks. So I would have beers, but yeah, I don't know. It didn't help with a hangover, but it helped with the moment that we were in. And it was like $1. So I was like, yeah, I'll just have a beer. And I didn't even taste it at that point. So it doesn't really count as a memory. But my husband said, Brian said to me, to the waitress, "I'll have a tall Miller Lite." And I was like, "Yeah, I'll have one too." He's like, "I really like baseball." I'm like, "Yeah, I like baseball too." All these things are like fabrications of truth. I didn't really want a Miller Lite, and I really didn't like baseball. But we sat there for 2 hours, and all the tables around us in waitressing, they call them flipping, when like people come sit and go. So the tables were all flipping around us nonstop all night, and we just sat there and we talked, and it was amazing. And we said goodbye to each other, and my dad, part of the story is my dad's a mechanic. So I always had like the worst cars ever. So in the summer, I had a car with heat, but no air conditioning. And I had in the winter, which is when we met, I had a car with air conditioning, but no heat. So I had parked pretty far from the front of the restaurant so that I would not get seen as I got into the car and wrapped myself up in a Ninja Turtle comforter so that I could drive back home. But so we said our goodbyes, and he had mentioned that he didn't have any like dress clothes for like the internship that we were in. I was like, "Oh, give me a call. We can go shopping together." He never called. And I was like, "What a jerk." And I thought, well, I guess that's not going to work out. And it turns out he had a girlfriend.
Yeah.
And he
slight complication there.
Yeah. So he ended up breaking up with her within like, the next week or so. But yeah, after that, we really bonded over learning about how beer was made. And my gateway beer was a Shipyard Pumpkinhead. I really loved the sweetness of it. It tasted like a pumpkin latte. It was wonderful. At this point in my life, my palate has changed quite a bit, and that actually is very too sweet for me. So I get very nostalgic. So I'll actually take a little bit of that sweet pumpkin beer that comes out every year still. And I will do about like a quarter of a glass of that and then 3/4 of a nice dark stout and mix them. And it really cuts down on the sweetness, but still makes me go, "Aw, remember when we first had this together? It was wonderful."
What's so interesting, Amanda, is that just asking you for the memory triggers this story of like, and it almost puts you in this place. It's this idea of taste and smells. Like, there's probably food. What's your earliest smell recollection from childhood? And someone asked me that once, and I'm like, Play-Doh. I don't know. Like, it's just like a thing, like where you're instantly transported. Like, and I'm sure with some of the beers, like if you're like, "Oh, I remember the first time I tried this," or especially since you have such a palate that can distinguish all the different flavors, and as you try more and more, that I'm sure it gets more and more refined.
Yeah, it does. I definitely have things that I like, and so one thing that sets my show apart from other beer shows is there's a lot of tasting shows out there. I don't do that. I drink beer because it's
Yeah.
a beer show, obviously, but I don't actually talk about the taste and the flavors. And the reason I don't do that is because, I mean, I might talk about it very much superficially, but I don't want to put any ideas in somebody else's head.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like my palate is going to be a lot different than yours. Even if we've had the same exact experiences, my tongue is different than your tongue.
Mm-hmm.
So me trying to tell you what you should be tasting and what experiences you should be having with this beer aren't fair.
Yeah.
And so I don't do that. I don't review beers. I don't give tasting notes.
I always think that podcasts where there's alcohol involved are slippery slopes, because unless you know that you're going to just try the one beer, but I've seen a couple devolve into just like randomness and probably something different than what was intended when the episode started.
Yeah, that's another problem I have with tasting shows, is that it's an hour of like a bunch of friends getting together in their basement drinking beers, and they start by talking about beer and all of these flavors that they think they can taste, and hopefully somebody else can taste, but maybe not. And then by the end of it, they're talking about like that time the dog did this really stupid thing, and you're like, what the heck are we talking about? Like, why?
Yeah,
Where did this go?
It always sounds funnier to the people who are hosting, but to the people, you know, because there's always like the annoying drunk guy in person, and now you're like the annoying podcast host because you're telling jokes that only you appreciate. So
yeah, the most that I've ever had on the show is 2 beers. Generally it's 1 though. Having 2 is like, that's a weird show. You know, sometimes I have actually done a tasting show where it's a round table, but we try like the, you know, like a ounce or 2 of the different beers. We did 1, and it was really more about learning about a style. So we tried a bunch of different beers within one style, and a brewer that he is amazing. He has like this like crazy brain that remembers all these facts, and he can tell you exactly what year and what part of what country a beer first started. And it was just like listening to him. And then he throws in, he's not a dad, but then he throws in all of these crazy dad jokes. And so it was just like this episode that was like off the rails before it even started, but in like the most pleasant way possible.
very interesting stuff. And
I love my brewery friends. They are wonderful.
Well, I love this episode because I think we teased out a bunch of different threads, and we were able to kind of bring them all in and touch on all of them, which I think was fascinating.
Yeah, if you ever want to like go back off on a vampire, or I really like fairies and, you know, all kinds of mythical beasts, you just let me know.
Yeah, fishing, we covered it all here.
Yeah.
So a couple of last questions. What's the one most misunderstood thing about you?
Oh wow, you want to go deep, huh? So I appear to be very outgoing, and it's all very much a facade. Before I go to any event, I have like this playlist that I listen to of like old time rap and like the Spice Girls, and I have to really pump myself up. And I have huge body issues where I'm like, oh, I can't wear this. I can't, like, it's very nerve wracking. And the way I get around that is like listening to the music, pumping myself up, and then reminding myself that nobody cares about me and what I look like as much as I care about me and what I look like, right? They're all dealing with their own stuff. And quite honestly, if I walk into a conversation and the first thing that pops into their head is like, oh, what is she doing here? They've got their own problems. Like, why aren't they worried about, like, you know, what they're going to say next? Why are they even caring? So, you know, I have to remind myself that. But yeah, it's that I'm very outgoing and very much an extrovert. And, you know, I am, but there's this other side of me. You know, I fight body issues, depression. I have all this other stuff that's so much deeper under the surface. And it's just, I really work hard at always bettering myself and trying to never letting fear or, you know, rejection hold me back. I just want to I'll keep persevering no matter what.
Yeah, that's super inspiring. And that's something that, like, we can't hear enough of, because everyone goes through it. You know, whatever, pick the topic, fill in the blank. I mean, there's something that we all don't like about ourselves, and we just tend to beat ourselves up over it. But I think you getting out there, you're doing a better thing by having people be inspired by you, by your podcast, by the fact that you're out there, your personality, like it's infectious. And so you realize like you're almost doing a disservice to people when you're not putting yourself out there in that uncomfortable situation. So I kudos to you to keep persevering beyond that. And I think the more you do it, the more people's lives you're actually going to impact.
Well, thank you. That's very sweet of you.
What's something you've changed your mind about recently?
Well, we're having a lot of. I don't really change my mind a lot. I'm very stubborn. Very stubborn. I will put something in my head and I'll be like, this is what it's gonna be. Like this, you gotta. If it doesn't happen, then I get angry.
Mm-hmm.
Like that. No, I've already decided. Like in my head, it's happened this way. So how can it not happen? I was gonna say originally that we have a lot of renovations going on, so always kind of like changing my mind on like what I want exactly. But no, I'm pretty stubborn on that too. The one thing that I actually did really change my mind about recently, my daughter's turning 6.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried to convince her not to turn 6, but she, for some reason, is like, no, I don't know.
Doesn't listen to you.
No, I keep telling her. She's like, Mommy, I'm going into 1st grade next year. I'm like, no, you're going back to preschool. She's like, no. She kind of gets mad at me about that. But she's having her birthday party. She wants to have. So here in Maine, we have this amazing scene of like all these things. And so part of that is we have this thing called Circus Maine. And so they put on all these circus performances, but they also teach all kinds of classes and have birthday parties. So she wants to have a circus birthday party where she goes with her friends and learns. And like it's a certain price for 8 people. I know this is like the most random story, but it's like it's gonna get there in a minute.
Yeah, sure.
So there's like a certain price for 8 people. So I was like, okay, you can have 8 people, but there's this one person you can't invite because she's a real handful, and like it's just, there's a lot of reasons that she is hard to handle, and I didn't want her to ruin my daughter's birthday. And so I actually like sourced a lot of information like from other parents and from like instructors that they both have had, and really talked to my husband's like, it's not really fair not to let her invite her. She really wants her there. And so it's monumentous for me for like being able to take in other people's stuff and like really thinking about like, how will it actually affect my daughter? Is it going to ruin things so badly that, the backlash of not inviting her would be bigger? I talked to some other moms and they suggested talking to like the instructors that'll be performing the party and just like being upfront with them in the first place, being like, so this one kid does have a little bit, like if any kids, not this one kid, but if any of the kids have some troubles, don't fear having the parents take them out or something, so trying to find workarounds. But yeah, that's the biggest one because it was like a really big thing where I had to like, I want everything to be perfect for my daughter.
Yeah.
Not in a way where it comes easily, because that's what's ruining our kids.
They do need to stumble and fall, right? They need to scuff their knees and then cry and make mistakes, and because we all did them, I mean.
Yeah.
And that's how we learn, actually.
Right. And it's just I think that it's so easy to be like so forgiving at that age. Like this girl I would never want her at my birthday. Like, what I mean? Like if she was an adult person, I'd be like, no, like, no way. I'm not. But they're so forgiving, and they just, and trying to really, look at that and learn from that, and, let go of my stubborn ways and be okay with how things go. And if they don't go perfectly, be okay with that and be forgiving and keep moving on. It's something that kids do so easily. And we've learned over time to not do that as easily.
It's amazing if we just pay enough attention to children, especially within that age bracket. They are our best teachers at sometimes, because they just the things that come out of their mouth, the way they interact with people, the unconditional love they have for people, the forgiveness, their ability to forgive, like friends that like have quote unquote done them wrong, like mommy, daddy, it's like that's how it is, and that's it's okay, and if I think more adults live their life like children, I think we'd be in a better place.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, like I talked about earlier, having body issues, and I just have to listen to them. They tell me all the time how beautiful I am. You know,
Awesome.
yeah, it's just, it really is. It's so often we're too adult
Yeah.
in our lives.
Well, Amanda, you are definitely awesome in my book.
Thank you. You're pretty stinking awesome yourself.
And I'm a good judge of people's vibe, their energy, and I know we hit it off right away. So I was excited because I just kind of know in that back of my mind, I'm like, oh yeah, she's going to be on the show at some point. So I'm glad we were able to make it happen.
Me too.
And I'm looking forward to reconnecting. Are you going to make it to Podcast Movement?
Probably not.
Okay.
Not unless, like, all of a sudden the show's like, here's money.
Yeah. Well, put it out there. Maybe a fundraiser from your listeners will help you get out there, and you can tell stories along the way. I'm sure that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Actually, so I think Clay from the Fish Nerds and I are going to be going down to what is it called? MapCon, Mid-Atlantic Podcast Conference.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to do that. We're going to like stop at breweries and like figure just do all kinds of fun things as we carpool our way down there. It is in September.
Okay.
It's right near Philly. It's like in New Jersey technically, but it's like right over a bridge. And it's like that first weekend in September, not the Labor Day one, but the one right after that. And
oh yeah,
I
actually have it on my calendar.
Joe Pardo's great. He's wonderful. And so Clay and I are going to try to go down there, and hopefully we'll be debuting our we got to come up with a fun name for it, but our little workshop on, Full House stars and Family Matter stars all getting together and hanging out at Disney World or something. Those are always the most fun episodes.
Just ask your listeners. Just ask your listeners or your Facebook group. They'll help you with the naming.
Yeah, absolutely.
So where's the best place for folks to track you down online?
So greatbeeradventure.com is where everything lives. And if you're a picture person like I am, hit me up on Instagram at greatbeeradventure.
Amanda, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your stories. They're amazing stories. They're really funny. And I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun.
What a good sport Amanda was. And I know you had to at least smile, if not laugh out loud, at some of the things that we covered in this conversation. She's such a good sport, good energy, and just one of those people that you love being around because you know you're going to have a good time. So thank you again to Amanda Doughty, and I look forward to reuniting with the entire Podfest crew in Florida early next year. It's going to be really fun. It's going to be like a family reunion for me, and it's just one of those that's on the list as a definite every year now. We are a proud member of podcastica.com. Check out Game of Microphones, just getting started up. I really love Jason and crew's commentary following each episode of Game of Thrones. And it really helps to get my fix in terms of like what happened in the episode. Can you please talk me off the ledge? Especially with some of these Game of Thrones episodes, they get pretty bananas. And the new season's off to a great start. So check that out, podcastica.com, Game of Microphones. Intro and outro music composed by Cedar and Soil. Check out his fantastic selection of music at cedarsoil.com. I'm telling you, he's an amazing producer and a good friend of mine. And all those songs that you hear there, if you do check him out, they're all produced by him. Like, he plays all the instruments and sings too. Super talented and super inspiring. Don't forget to support our sponsor, Podbean, at podbean.com/podcastjunkies. And remember, it's still the same offer. If you set up your account with Podbean, then please let me know, and you get 30 minutes of free coaching from me. Just let me know that you set it up, and we can talk about whatever you want related to the launch of your podcast. The retention hashtag for this week is Great Beer Amanda. So GreatBeer Amanda, hashtag Great Beer Amanda. You can tag Amanda at Great Beer ADV, which is short for adventure. So Great Beer, GreatBeeradv on Twitter. And of course, you can tag us at podcast_junkies. Tune in next week when I have an interesting conversation with Claire Duffy. Claire's a new and upcoming podcaster, but she really caught my ear with her show, The Women of Hollywood. And it's about the early years of the film industry and the unknown stories of these women who were really powerful in their time. And I think a lot of these are not known. And so she's bringing them to the spotlight in her own unique way. I think you'll get a kick out of that. Don't forget to download our free PDF if you need some tips on how to get your show launched and see some of the tools that I'm using on a regular basis. It's now been updated for 2017. Head on over to podcastjunkies.com/8tools. That's the number 8, TOOLS. Thanks for all you do to support the show, and have a fantastic day.